Good afternoon, everybody. All right, we got people rolling in. Should have a packed house today. Saw a flurry of signups come in this morning. Thank you all. Marketing works. Post on LinkedIn and Twitter, and then people click your links and then they sign up for stuff like this. That's how that's supposed to be. Okay, cool. We're going to get started. I'll get started in maybe like 30 seconds. We'll let people roll in. For those of you that don't know what you're here for, we're going to talk about the 6 secrets to scaling your sales team. The things that people don't talk about out loud, the secrets that nobody wants to tell you. I'm just kidding. Some of this stuff you may have heard before, most likely not, or maybe you haven't heard it in exactly the way that we're going to talk about it today. As I started to write down and put this deck together last week, I ended up coming up with a lot more than just 6 things. And so you have a surprise ahead of you. You're going to get all kinds of value today. It's all being recorded, so you have to bounce away, or if you get tied up or you get a call, I'm going to send you an email that has a link to this recording whenever it gets posted to YouTube. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. Give me just a second. All right, let's get into it. So 6 secrets to scaling your sales teams. This is for founders and sales leaders of B2B SaaS companies. So if you're running a sales team for a non-software company, some of this stuff is going to be relevant for you, and that's okay. You know, you're some of this stuff you can apply to your own business, but it's going to be most relevant for B2B SaaS founders and sales leaders, excuse me. So over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to keep this to 30 minutes if we can. We're going to expose all of those secrets about scaling sales team. This comes from, the last 12 years for me building and scaling software sales teams at the mix of companies that I've worked at. And these are the categories. We're going to talk about target market. We're going to talk about hiring. We're going to talk about compensation. We're going to talk about sales team culture. We're going to talk about setting goals, or specifically setting your revenue plan. And we're going to talk about pricing. And there's actually a bonus secret, but you have to stay till the end to hear it. And let's get into it. So a little bit of background on my story for those who don't know me. I'm Martin. I ran sales for Levelset for 10 years. I started as the first sales hire, part of the founding team. And when I started, we didn't have any revenue, we didn't have any ARR. We had transactional revenue, but we didn't have any ARR. The company was very small then. I think I was employee number 7. And over 10 years, we scaled it up to pretty big number, and then we sold the business. But what I've learned through my experience and talking with so many other founders and sales leaders over the years, I wish that somebody had told me these things earlier, because it would have accelerated our growth. So that's my hope for you, is that you take the things we talk about today, you put them into your own business so you can scale faster than we did. It took us like 15 months to get to $1 million. It took 6 years to get from 1 million to 10 million. And then from 10 million to 20 million took like 18 months, right? How does it happen like that? Well, that's because a lot of the things that I'm going to share with you today are things that I got wrong, or that we got wrong, or mistakes that we made as we were scaling up. It's just how it is when you're scaling a team. You're going to make mistakes. But that said, if we'd known some of these things a little bit earlier, we probably could have scaled faster. And hopefully you take this advice, put it into your own business, and you can scale to 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever the next revenue milestone is for you and your team. A couple of warning signs, it's on the label. If this feels oversimples or too high level, it's because it is. I mean, we're got 30 minutes to go through a lot of really heavy stuff. And so the offer stands for anybody on this call. If you have questions about this stuff and you want to talk about it, or you want to just some more color on these topics, send me an email, martin@martinroth.com. I'm really easy to get in touch with. LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm pretty responsive. And if I don't respond, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just, send me a reminder. There's a lot of inbound. But if it feels oversimple, it's because it is. It's meant to be a bit of a high-level overview of this stuff. Another assumption, or an assumption I'm making, is that you and your team have product market fit. Or another way to say it is, you have at least $1 million in ARR. I'm not going to talk about how to go get your first customers. I'm going to talk about, once you have a good install base of customers and a bit of a sales team working, how do you take it from 3 or 4 sales reps to 40 sales reps, or from 10 sales reps to 100 sales reps? That's the stage that we're talking about. So if you're a little earlier than that, you can still hang around. You're going to learn some things, but it's going to be most relevant for those companies that are at 5, 10, 15 million in ARR and looking to scale beyond where they're at. So, without further ado, let's talk about secret number one. You have to know your target market. We also call this ICP, or ideal customer profile, but there's really two things about this. The first is the size of your market is going to decide your scale. To put it in a different way, big markets allow you to scale very quickly. You can't outgrow a small market. If you only have 2,000 prospective customers in your market that you could sell your product to, it's really hard to scale quickly. And I think a lot of teams lie to themselves, or maybe they aren't intellectually honest about how big the market is. And so the best and fastest growing teams know the market you're going after is going to decide the scale and speed that you scale. And also, they're really deliberate about which customers they want to go after, which leads to point number two. You can't fly two planes at the same time. I'm going to talk about this in a second, but basically, you got to find that ICP, right? The ideal customer profile, and you need to focus on that ideal customer profile at the expense of all of the other shiny objects that you could be focusing on as a team. Okay. So let's talk about the first. This is an article that if you've come to any of these other workshops, you've heard me talk about this before. It's from Christoph Jans, who's a venture capitalist. It's from 2014, which is, in the earlier years of B2B SaaS scale. But I like this article because it makes it really clear the different types of companies, or the different types of ways to scale a company. And the basic idea here is there are 5 different ways to get to a $100 million business. If you're a venture-backed software company, you want to get to $100 million. $100 million gives you some big valuation. That's what venture capitalists want, is good outcomes. But even if you don't have venture capital, you still want to grow. And there's only 5 ways. I mean, there's an infinite number of ways, but there are 5 categories of ways to get to a $100 million business. And you could either go after a bunch of really big customers that pay $1 million a year, or you could go after a bunch of small customers that pay only $100 a year or $1,000 a year. And there's every combination in between. And the reason this is important is that the way that you would go after an elephant, right? If you were to go after $1 million a year or $100 million a year customer, the way that you would go attract those customers is like categorically different than the way that you would go after a mouse, for example, a customer that's going to pay $1,000 a year or $5,000 a year. Deciding which part of the market is most relevant for your product and deciding how you're going to go to that market and get them to buy your product is really important. And the problem is, most companies, when they're early stage, this is a mistake we made, is that we had a really great SMB motion. We had a really good enterprise motion, or at least we thought we did. And so we tried to scale both of them at the same time, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work because of a variety of reasons. I'd laid down some of the attributes of the different types of go-to-market. And again, this is, oversimplified, but for SMB, it's a transactional purchase. The deal sizes are small. It's mostly inbound or product led. Usually you have a single buyer involved in the purchase decision. You get a little bit bigger. It's a more considered purchase. The average deal size gets up a little bit, over 10,000, sometimes getting up to $100,000 a year. A lot of the go-to-market is outbound. You have to be super targeted with which customers you want to go after. There's a buying group involved instead of a single buyer. And then with enterprise, this is a strategic purchase. It's very big average deal sizes. It's almost entirely outbound, sometimes referral-based, long sales cycle, large buying group, lots of influencers, lots of multi-threading. The reason I lay out all 3 of these options is when you think about scaling your team, and you're trying to get repeatability, you have success with 1 rep or 2 reps or 5 reps, and you want to get more of the same type of actions going. Whenever you throw in a different selling motion that's at a different deal size or a different type of buying group or even a different value proposition, you lose focus and the team slows down. And so, in summary, you have to know your target market. It's got to be big enough. You have to be really clear on what your go-to-market is, and you have to stick with your ICP. Don't try to fly two planes at once. Pick one motion. And then once it's working, you'll know, and it'll feel like you have the space to go add another selling motion. Now, one disclaimer here, don't turn revenue down, unnecessarily. If somebody comes in and walks in and says, "Here, take my money," you can certainly sign enterprise customers up if you're an SMB customer, or vice versa. If you're an enterprise company and you have SMB customers that want to come buy your product, sell it to them. But be careful what you're signing up for, because you're probably not set up to handle the type of customer engagement that they like. So again, it's just about being deliberate, making sure you know your market, know your customer, and pick one at a time. Once you get to 10, 15, 20 million in revenue, you can start to build more selling motions across different segments or even different products. But don't do it too early. Definitely not before 10 million. The second secret is around hiring. You want to be patient with hiring until it's obvious. And what I mean by that is there's so many early stage companies that think hiring salespeople is going to solve the revenue problems. And that's just not how it is. Like, yes, if you can add sales reps and you know how to ramp them and you know how to educate them and you have leads for them, it can work. But I see it happen. People put the cart before the horse, right? They want to go hire reps, and then they want those reps to go figure out how to sell. That's not how you scale quickly. Okay. So there's three things I want you to remember here. Number one, you want to have enough leads. Never, ever, ever hire salespeople into a team without having enough leads for them to call. If they're going to be calling on outbound leads, you want to be clear with the reps that they are going to be outbound selling. They're going to have to go rip dials and make a bunch of phone calls to go generate their own demand. If they're inbound reps, you want to make sure that you have enough inbound volume, or that you have enough ad spend to buy the leads, to put it in the reps' hands so that they can cover their number. So many sales leaders and founders hire reps without having enough leads for them to work, and it like never works out well. Second thing here is always hire in batches. Hire two at a time, preferably of the same role, right? So if you're going to hire an account executive, hire two account executives at the same time. One argument against this is, oh, there's budget constraints, we can't afford to. Well, let me give you an alternative opinion. The first is, there's a few parts to this opinion. The first is, if you hire two at a time, you're going to know within 90 days if they're going to work out or not. And you're only signing up, you're signing up for 90 days of their on-target earnings for the whole year. And if you hire two and they both work out, well, that's great. Like you're not going to be mad about that. If you hire two and one of them doesn't work out, at least you have the other one that is working out, and then it's still going to be good. The economics will improve across that cohort. And then number three, if you only hire one and it doesn't work out, which is like a 50-50 chance, especially if you're early in your hiring process and you don't really have it, an onboarding set up and the hiring process set up. If you only hire one and they leave, the biggest cost is not the cash. The cost is the time that it took to hire them, to onboard them, and the opportunity cost of not having a rep in the seats. It's a killer. Some other benefits of hiring in batches of two or more: there's competition that's natural, which is great. They help each other. They support each other. Hiring in classes has tons and tons of benefits. And so whenever you are ready to hire and you have enough leads, hire in batches if you can. And then the last thing is, adding people does not equal growth. I don't know what I used to have a little equal sign thing in there. I don't know where it went. But basically, the point here is, if you're hiring to match a revenue plan just because the revenue plan says to go add bodies to the team, don't do it. Like, don't just go hire people because the revenue plan says to hire people. That you should be principled in your hiring, and it should be obvious if you go hire somebody, you know that they're going to be successful. You can almost like give them the blueprint for exactly how they're going to get to their number. So what makes a good hire? I get asked this often. These are the 5 criteria that I hired for, or the characteristics of the rep. Enthusiasm. I say it often. A little bit of enthusiasm goes a long way. People can fake it a little bit, and that's okay. If they want the job, they can fake it. But you really want to watch for enthusiasm. Do they act like they want the business? Do they act like they want the job? Grit's super important. Can they overcome, do that? Can they persevere? Can they overcome obstacles? Can they get rejected a bunch of times and push through? Look, it's sales. We like live in the land of rejection. You have to have thick skin. You have to be gritty. You have to just, kind of in the face of tons of adversity, you have to push through. The third is probably the most important. It's ambition. I can't want you to be more successful than you want you to be successful. I'll say that again. I can't want you to be more successful than you want you to be successful. You have to have people on your team that are ambitious. If they're not ambitious, it's really hard to build a winning and successful sales culture around the team. Curiosity, obviously, this one is important. If you're doing discovery, you want to be naturally curious, not just about the prospect, but curious about your own career and curious about developing your skills. And the final thing here is agency, high agency people who are resourceful, the figure it out mindset, super, super important in sales. So those are the 5 characteristics I hire for. You can steal those. And if you want any more context on that, happy to expand on it. Just shoot me an email. Secret number 3, your comp plan is like gasoline. You wouldn't believe how many early stage sales teams have comp plans that like you need a NASA computer to figure out how to calculate the commissions every single month. Don't do that. Make the comp plan simple. It should be so simple that you can do the math on the back of a napkin. Another principle I have for comp plans is you want to overcompensate your overperformers. In other words, when somebody exceeds 100% of their quota, you want them to really run up the score and have big commission checks. And there's some math behind this where each marginal dollar over 100, if you're setting your on-target earnings right and you're setting your quotas right, each marginal dollar over 100% is actually quite cheap for you because your fixed costs are blended across all of the dollars that they bring in. And so it makes it so that you can pay out more for each dollar over 100%. Do it and communicate why you're doing it, which is that the company values salespeople who outperform their expectations. The other thing is don't put a commission floor. I see some companies will put in like if you don't hit 50% of your number, if you don't hit 70% of your number, then you don't get paid. There's not much upside from that. And there's a ton of downside. I think people, sales leaders and founders who set that kind of compensation plan think that they're saving money, but it's kind of being penny wise and pound foolish. You don't save that much money. And more importantly, it's just like hurting the morale. It's better to just pay the reps. And if they're not performing, you're going to, they're going to go be successful somewhere else anyway. You're going to have to terminate them for performance. And so overcompensate overperformers. Don't put a commission floor. Make it clear that you prioritize overperformance and that's what you're focused on. And you'll find reps, they will rush to deliver on that outcome because that's what gets rewarded. And then the final thing here is change it up. When you have a compensation plan that's working for 12 months, switch it every 12 months, reevaluate. You might be able to pay more. You might be able to pay less. You're going to have to reset quotas. It's okay to change the commission rate. But when you do change, commission rate, change the compensation plan, it's good to anchor the changes around the start of the year. If you're going to do like a revenue kickoff or a sales kickoff at the beginning of the year, great time to roll out new compensation plans. And you want to wrap the rollout with a ton of explanation for why you're making that decision. So the comp plan is like gasoline. It can either light the whole thing on fire or it can be like fuel to really accelerate the growth for your team. Because what's the Charlie Munger quote? It's like, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. It's not all salespeople are coin operated, but in some ways we kind of are, right? If you give us a really big outcome for doing a certain action, we're going to go do that action. And that's how you train the team. So here's an example of a simple comp plan, just so that I'm not giving you, I'm not speaking in platitudes the whole time. This is round numbers, average numbers. I'm not saying that you should go take this and copy it verbatim. Use it as an inspiration for a structure, okay? So let's say that a rep has an annual quota of $500,000 a year. The on-target earnings, that means if they hit their quota for every single month, exactly on the number, they will get $100,000. And that ratio, the quota to OTE ratio, 5 to 1, it's a really great ratio. That means that your cost of sales is 20% of the total bookings for the year. If you're selling software, you have good margins. There's plenty enough room in there for you to pay those kinds of payouts to reps, and that'll be like a good CAC ratio for you. So in this situation, if you're making 100 grand a year and on target earnings, your base salary is going to be 50, your variable compensation is going to be 50, and your commission rate to get $50,000 in variable compensation is going to be 10% of your bookings. Pretty straightforward. And just to reiterate, you want to overcompensate over performance and don't include commission floors. There's a lot of other stuff to add on compensation philosophy, but this is a good primer on how to make a scalable AE comp plan. And you could even take some of these principles and apply it to an SDR role or even a manager role. Secret number 4, be clear about your sales culture. I see a lot of sales teams get this wrong, where they aren't deliberate about what principles or what matters to the sales culture. And so the 3 things here are: define your values, actually write them down and share them with the team. Get the team involved and get them to help you write the values down, but be clear about what values you stand for, and make them come alive in the organization by bringing them up often and tying bright spots back to the values of the sales team. Second thing here is no negative nodes. A negative node when you see one. It's the people who are toxic or who are negative, or people who are just, it's very clear that they are not a fit with the culture. And as a leader, you have to have a very keen eye to watch out for folks who are negative nodes, and they've just got to go. It doesn't mean that they're bad people or that they are, it doesn't make them bad people. It just means that they're not a fit for your sales team and your sales culture. And so we love you, but this isn't the place for you. We want you to go be successful where you can be happy and be supported in the way you need to be supported. It's totally okay to address negative nodes head on. And if you have one on your team, do it as soon as you can, because if you're like me and you've been in this situation, every time you get rid of a negative node, you realize that you should have done it sometimes months or even years before. So no negative nodes. And the final thing is here is celebrate bright spots. When you celebrate bright spots, what does that mean? It's like when somebody does something good, when somebody hits their quota, or somebody's pacing toward hitting their quota, or somebody reaches across the aisle and helps someone in customer success solve an issue, or it doesn't matter. Anything that the team does that is a behavior that you want repeated, that is a positive behavior that you want repeated, celebrate it, put it on a pedestal, talk about it in your sales team meetings, talk about it in Slack, share it by email with the whole team when it's a really big bright spot. You want to make it a point to celebrate bright spots, because people will notice and they will repeat that behavior. And I have a great picture from one of our, he was like our head of sales at Levelset, Ryan Beeson. He used to wear these green pants on Fridays, and we used to have so much fun in the office because this guy just knew how to celebrate bright spots. I know he, I don't think he likes this picture that much, but he'll appreciate that I'm sharing it with you. Make it a moment. It's the idea of like the power of moments matter. People remember things, and you got to work anyway. Let's make it fun. Make it a moment. Celebrate those bright spots. All right, the 5th secret. We're getting up there on time. We got 7 minutes left to get you through the rest of this. I'm going to get you out here in 30. No problem. The 5th secret is your revenue targets should make sense. Don't sign up for a comp plan. Don't sign up for a revenue plan that you can't hit. So many times, sales leaders and even CEOs, they feel the pressure from their board, or the VP of sales feels the pressure from the CEO. They want to go triple, double, or whatever whatever people talk about with like super fast growth rates. It's fine to want aggressive growth, but it is not okay to sign up for a revenue plan that you don't actually understand how the revenue is going to happen, or you don't believe the assumptions that are in the model. And so my advice is just be honest with yourself and do the math. The math should add up. You have to look at the plan from top down and bottom up. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that in a minute. But the headline here is, don't sign up for a revenue plan that you can't hit. You have to understand 100% how you're going to hit your revenue plan. Otherwise, you're going to be in a trap, and nobody wants to miss their number. You can't miss your number. So here's how to make sure your revenue plan makes sense in a minute or less. The top-down checklist is basically looking at the demand model. How many leads do you need to hit your number? What's the conversion rate? What's the current ACV? If you hold those things steady, how many leads does it take to hit their number? Okay, then how many leads can one account executive handle, one quota-carrying rep? Okay, so if we have the marketing forecast for how many leads need to come in, and even if it's an ambitious forecast, if you know the number of leads that are going to come in and how many leads an AE can handle, then how many AEs do you need to work the leads to hit the conversion rate at the certain ACV to get the number of customers to make your revenue number? Okay, that's the top-down version. Then the separate exercise, you go bottoms up. You say, what's the sum of all the quotas on the reps that we have on the team? What's our attrition rate going to be this year? Because you're going to have some people that move on to other opportunities, most likely. How many reps do you need to add to cover? And I say 110% of your number. This is one of those secrets that I didn't learn until way later on. There's this idea of over assignment. You should never have the sum of the quotas on your team be exactly the same number as your revenue number. You want to have some over assignment, 110%, 115%, whatever you feel like you can get away with from a cost perspective. You don't want like 150% over assignment, because then you're just sandbagging your revenue number. But you should have a little bit of buffer there. And what this is important for is any type of attrition or lack of performance, or let's say you roll out a new packaging or pricing, you give yourself some buffer so that you don't have to redline your sales team and get 100% of quota capacity every single time to show up to get to your revenue number. So how many reps do you need to get to 110% of your number? That's that over assignment. And then how long does it take to ramp each new rep? You're going to have to add new reps, presumably, if you're scaling up your team, unless you have another way of making the reps more efficient or getting them to close at bigger deal sizes or higher conversion rates. And so the bottoms up checklist is like a headcount driven revenue model. The top down checklist is a demand driven revenue model. And if you do these separately with some intellectually honest assumptions about what you think you can accomplish in a 12-month period, those numbers should get pretty close to each other. And if they don't, well, then you have a misalignment in your understanding of the business. The demand model and the headcount model have to match. That's where I see a lot of revenue leaders and founders get caught up with signing up for a revenue plan that they can't hit. And if the numbers make sense, it's still going to be really hard to hit your number. That's okay. That's what we signed up for as sales leaders. But at least you know the math and you know what you're managing to. Super, super important. The last secret here is about pricing. I get a lot of questions about pricing. How should we price? How do we negotiate with customers? Do we offer discounts? Do we not offer discounts? The reality is that your price isn't as important as you think. At least early on, it's not as important as you think. The price is so much less important than the value that you deliver to the customers, right? There's this concept of that price is only a factor in absence of value. And so the price that you're charging, it just needs to be enough. Make sure that there's enough margin that you can pay your reps well, that you have margin that you can put back into the business. Don't lose money on customers. But over time, as you scale, the economics of the business improve. I like to say that your future pricing economics will wash out whatever the current economics are. If they're good, bad, doesn't matter. As you scale up, the economics of your pricing and your business tend to improve, and that washes out any mistakes you have early on. And so the key, especially if you're like in that $1 to $5 million range, is you just need logos, and you want to make sure you're profitable, like unit profitable, that you're not spending, it doesn't take you 24 or 36 months to recover your customer acquisition costs. Like that's not great. You want to be closer to like 12 months or less, even 9 months, or negative CAC. That's like a super popular concept now. The point here is your economics will improve over time. Pricing is important, but it's not as important as you think. And pricing is all relative. Your prospect doesn't have a frame of reference when you're offering price. And so it's okay to ask for a higher price, and you can always negotiate down. You don't have to negotiate against yourself, right? So some things to remember when you're thinking about pricing. Why do people buy? They buy because purchase decisions are emotional. They get justified by the ROI, but the decisions are emotional. They're not really thinking about the price. They're thinking about, how do I get promoted, and how can I get this thing bought? Like, how can I get the company to approve this purchase? You want to put the value of your product in terms that make it feel like the value is 10x the price that they're paying. Again, that's like you're going to justify the money you're spending by what you expect the ROI to be. But the reality is, people, they just want to, they don't want to look bad. They want to look good. They want to look like all stars. They want to get promoted. So that's your job as a salesperson, is to de-risk that. And then the final thing is, don't negotiate against yourself. Say the price, and then let them tell you it's too high, and then what they would be willing to pay. Is if you're way early on, I'll put a price out there, and if they say no, then say, okay, well, what price did you have in mind? You would be so surprised how many times customers have no idea what they think the price should be. So get them to tell you. Don't negotiate against yourself. Be firm in your price. Don't be too scientific about picking your price. Just pick one, go with it, try to sell it. The selling motion and the go-to-market is so much important. You can always dial the price in later. And now for the bonus, this is like the secret in my back pocket. I tell every single team that I work with right now, as soon as you can start building an install-based sales motion, do it. We waited way too long. We didn't create a focused team that only sold to existing customers. We didn't do that until like middle of 2020. We should have done it 5 years before that. So don't make the mistake I did. Start building an install-based selling motion today. What does that mean? Your customers are the best source for new revenue. There's 4 plays that I'd recommend running, and it's going to be product and product market fit dependent. But there's basically 4 things you can do. Again, assuming you're already at $1 million in ARR and you have product market fit, you can always raise prices at renewal. You should be raising prices every time your customer renews. The reason is because you're spending money building the product, making it more valuable. Or if they should be paying more for a more valuable product, if nothing else, inflation, right? But there should be a price increase at renewal. In most cases, when you have the conversation in advance of the renewal, it's a great way to talk about any of these other 4 opportunities to sell more things to the customer and deliver more value. The price increase is kind of like the lowest effort way to get more revenue from existing customers. And the second play here is usage-based expansion. So whatever your value metric is in your pricing, let's say they have 100 credits or 100 units or 100 projects or 100 contacts, whatever your value metric is, you want that to be time box. If they get 100 credits in a specific year, if somebody is halfway through the year, they signed up for 100 credits, but they've already consumed 80 credits, so they're pacing for 160, what a great opportunity to call them and say, we're so happy that you're getting value from the product. It looks like you're pacing 60% more than what you signed up for. Let's get you into some better pricing because your volume is so much higher than what you thought it would be, right? Usage-based expansion is a positive thing, and customers are usually happier to pay more money when they're getting more value. The last 2 here are pretty straightforward. When you have customers on legacy pricing, you should upgrade them to modern pricing. Great time to do that at renewal. Legacy customers can get a little frustrated by that, but usually they've been getting the benefit of that great pricing for a year or 2 years or 3 years even. And so it's okay to move people to your modern price. And you can negotiate with them, meet them in the middle. There's opportunities to get older customers to pay more for the value that they're getting. And then the last thing, if you have multiple products, you can cross-sell new products into your existing customers. You can sell them different modules. That's pretty straightforward if that's how you break out the pricing for your product. But the key here is you want to have some team, even if it's just one person, who is exclusively focused on getting more revenue from existing customers and delivering more value to existing customers, because the people who already spend money with you are the best source for new revenue. That's it for me. Those are the 6 secrets. If you want to work together, pretty easy. Go to martinroth.com/revup. You can learn more. I help companies scale from 1 million to 10 million faster. And I love working with early stage founders and sales leaders. I see a few of my friends on the call here in a number. And I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to stay for like, 5 minutes or so, maybe longer if you have a bunch of good questions, but put it in the chat.